Hello, everybody. Let me just close something over here. Haha. Welcome to this week's Sublime Text Live, where we're probably just going to chat and work on some tips for making your life in Sublime more sublime, something that I alluded to in yesterday's video, where I actually had a couple of things that I was going to put in there, and then after I just described the various ways that you could use the quick add next and the quick skip next and related functionalities, I decided to drop the other parts of that away. We're just going to give this a little bit of a second to make sure that everything's kosher and going as expected. I have the one version of OBS that I use, and I switch back and forth between doing stuff with Twitch and streaming on YouTube, and it's probably high time for me to just duplicate my portable install into another folder and have two icons, because I started doing the stuff that we need to do to flip stuff over, and then OBS crashed out from under me because I did something untoward. I guess I opened a configuration dialog to look at a URL. And then I just restarted it and went on with what I was doing, but it didn't save that I switched my profile. So there was an impromptu 20-second Twitch stream of nothing before I realized what happened in that particular thing. So in order to stop that from happening again, perhaps it's a good idea to just not do that sort of thing. But how's everybody's day going? so far. For those of you that have had much of a day, I know when Ashwin shows up, if Ashwin shows up in the chat, it usually happens right around the time that he wakes up. But hopefully everybody's had a pretty good day. Hello, Mike. It's going good. How's things going with you? I spent a lot of my day helping people put out fires with Git. There were some misunderstandings in how you do some simple operations or not so simple operations, because there were things that the people on my team haven't really used Git before the project that we're working on right now. So they had a little bit of a crash course in the basics of Git, but nothing too in-depth. And now they're getting to the point where they're feeling a little bit more comfortable and they're getting a little bit more adventurous. And then there's still the situation where when you try to do a merge and things go funky, stuff goes bad. Yeah, it's, oh, you know what? The ultra low latency on YouTube is nowhere near as cool as it is on Twitch, unfortunately, unless it did not save the setting for that, in which case I apologize, and I'm not sure that there's anything that I can do about that now, but I think it did. When you start a new stream, you can duplicate the settings from a previous stream, and it copies literally everything, including the name and the thumbnail and everything. But various other settings automatically reset themselves, and one of those is the latency thing. But I think we've noticed in the past that even at the ultra low latency, it's still not super great like it is on Twitch. But yeah, so I am the Office Git guy because I've been using it for a far longer time, just for my own purposes, for my own projects. I used to be a Subversion guy, and at work, the main thing that we use for the software that you've heard me talk about on Twitch streams and here, that is written in Objective-C, we use Subversion for that. Although we could technically use Git, historically it's just mostly been Subversion. Way back in the day when we first started, it was CVS and not Subversion, but in our defense, Subversion didn't exist yet. That's how long this thing has been going on. And we tend to work in a Git-like way, but with Subversion. And that is to say, for every distinct change that we'd like to make, we just clone a new copy of the repository or check out a new copy into a separate directory. Our software is set up to automatically base itself in the location where you check it out. That's most software is. So we could be using Git, but at this point, it's just sort of a inertia thing, if you will. At the office, for the other developers on VMS and Windows, they're in flux for what the version control system they're trying to use. So yeah, I've been using Git a lot for years and years now, more than a decade probably. Kind of lost track, just because I do work here on my Linux computer. I work on that computer. I work on that computer. I work on the one out there. I like to be able to shuffle my code around between places. Tons easier to do that with Git than it is with anything else. So yeah, my day so far has been helping people untangle merges that went awry, or Git stashes that didn't do what someone expected, or and this is entirely my fault, someone had a Git stash that I had them create a couple of months ago that I forgot to tell them, now that we're done, drop that stash. So it's just been sitting in their clone of the repository for all this time. And the girl didn't know, or my coworker, I should say, not a girl, she's a lady, she's a woman. She didn't realize that git stash pop deletes the stash. So she thought she could do that to get changes back another time. But what it actually did was try to apply changes from 4 months ago on top of new stuff. And with the pace that things are going, whoop, bad news. Yeah, so it's, as you say there, it's we got everything all sorted out. It took a little bit of time. When we actually have more training scheduled for tomorrow, which is an interesting thing. Let's go ahead and do this because we're rolling now. Because something that I discovered, and this is something that I actually, there was a couple of streams back, YouTube streams, that is, I think. I mentioned that I had seen at one point a JavaScript library of some sort that could draw graphs of the Hello, Ayush. Welcome into the stream. How's your night going so far, or your day, I should say? Trying to get better about figuring out where people are coming from, but expect stuff. But there was this library for drawing, node edge type graphs, not like bar chart graphs. Couldn't remember what it was, and Ashwin said, "Was it d3.js?" And yes, it was. So I had a page open for a while because I'm going to be creating videos on merge, and one of the things I want to do with that is come up with some graphics for the video that show the commit graph and how committing and merging and pulling and whatnot is affecting stuff, and how the branch labels change and everything. Because I think, awesome, that's great to hear. Hopefully it's not bad because you're in the stream. But I think a part of the confusion that happens, and this is something that we've discussed as well with them using Git, is that they don't fully understand the mechanism that Git's using behind the scenes to track commits and how changes connect with each other and stuff, and how the currently checked out thing is in the working directory. And that's because it's a little bit, I mean, not say that it's super different from other version control systems or anything like that, but I've always thought that Git is really one of those systems where, unlike other ones where you can treat the repository as a black box and you know that commands put stuff in or fetch stuff out, with Git it really behooves you to know a little bit about what's happening inside of the black box, how commits work, how the references are working, because so many of the commands, even the help in them, talks about what they're doing in relation to what it's going to do to the commit graph or what it's going to do to references and stuff like that. So you have to know a little bit about that. I think that's how I take that. So Ashwin reminded me of the library, and I went looking, and I found this jiggy here, which is ridiculously bright. Good gravy. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in the chat here. And if someone could... if you have any sort of link, or maybe you can parrot that one back. We were having a problem in the last stream where people that tried to post links into the chat, it just ate the message and didn't tell me or any other moderator, unless I'm not considered to be a moderator in my own broadcast, but I would assume that I am. And I double checked that all of the settings. So if you think of a link to paste in there, try that out and then let me know if it came through or not. And this is the thing we're looking at here. It uses this library, and I think something like this is going to be what we should use for coming up with those graphics. You can see I've looked at a couple of things here because it has this idea here. I'm going to move that up here. Try to remain cognizant of the fact that this side of the screen is covered by the chat right now. But it can show you the graph, right? So you can enter simplified commands for adding commits, and you see the animation, you see the graph going. We can get checkout test. Check out the branch, and then we can get commit, and then we can get checkout master and get commit. So now we've got some, branching happening. Get merge test. We can see the graph is drawing itself in. Now it's kind of constrained in the size of the screen that I have here, so I'm going to have to do some stuff here. But this would be a canvas that this is drawing this in. It works quite well. As a matter of fact, I think something like this one might be a better way. It even has the ability to display origins up here. Oh, fudge. Well, there is, if I can get the bot to respond, a Discord that I set up that I mentioned in the video yesterday. If there's a link that you'd like to share, you can drop it into one of the channels in the Discord if that pops up. But Nightbot was being a jerk earlier. There we go. And then if you do that and let me know, I'll redirect it into here while I try to figure out what's going on, because there's only the one checkbox for allow links, and it doesn't have a check in it. And just to be safe, I checked it and then saved and then came back and then unchecked it again. But by the same token, inside of the YouTube's advanced channel settings, there's a link for more settings, and inside of that, there's a link to advanced channel settings, which isn't the place that you just came from. It's a completely different page and a completely different site. Anytime that you have a link to your advanced channel settings from inside of your advanced channel settings and it's not the same page as the advanced channel settings, someone's user experience has gone a little bit cockeyed. But, whoops, I'll try to not type that in there. So I think this is going to be a cool thing to play with here. It seems to visualize a lot of stuff. We can do this sort of stuff. We can do tags. You can do, get checkout head like so and move it back a little bit and then create a branch and go. From what I've played with, I think he is it's like a single page HTML thing that's using this library. So I thought I'd share that if you're interested in this sort of thing. Expect to see something along the lines of this when we get into that whole Git video type operation. Because I'm thinking that we do want to talk a little bit about how the underlying stuff works for something like this. And I really think the confusing part for people is how to visualize the changes when they're branching out and how those changes are merging back in and stuff. Yeah, it's quite handy. And yeah, it's on the, as you can see up there. Well, you can't see it because it's completely blocked by the chat, but yeah, you can fork that up, and if you click on the link in the top right corner there that's hidden by the chat, takes you directly to the GitHub page with the source for the thing. So I've sort of played with that a little bit for the bit of the afternoon, trying to come up with a version sort of like the free playground or the Zen mode. But I think the playground one's probably going to be better, because the thing that more than anything that's hurting the people on the team, trying to visualize how the graph is changing and how branches are interacting is one thing. That can be a little bit confused if you're not used to working with the idea of, now I check out some stuff and go over here, and now I recheck that, check out the other one, make a commit here and do that sort of stuff. That's not stuff that they've been doing. They've very much been, one person works on one thing and they check out the code, and when they're done they check it in, and if somebody else checks out the code and makes a modification because someone's away or there's like an emergency and they need a second person, it's someone's job to try to manually reconcile the changes and hope nothing gets lost. And the chances of that are not a null-sum game. Even in Git, where it's possible for you to accidentally merge changes away without realizing it, it's even easier if you're doing it manually, right? So that's something that they're coming to terms with that. But the whole notion of, if I back that up and reload the page, it doesn't respond to that super great. That there's another repository somewhere that also has changes, and how you synchronize those. That is the point that's confusing them. And yeah, there's a thing in the under git commit. It like says, let's assume you already know how to add files to a commit and stuff. So that part is something that could probably be added, but I guess it's easier to just assume that you can just say git commit, because I have a feeling that this is a very simple little canvas thing of its own, because I can't, well, that might be actually text there. Hard to say, but yeah, that is a thing. That's the other thing too, and this is a good place to ask this, because we have technically minded people here and people that are presumably going to watch videos that we create with this. When I create these videos, I do want to have, I don't just want to jump in and say something like, we're starting up merge, this is the graph, you can see some stuff, here's some places where you can see some tags and you can see some stashes, and here's the files and stuff. I want to actually have some information on Git as a whole, right? Primarily because a lot of people have asked about that sort of thing. Most of the time when I get questions about merge, there are people that are asking questions just about Git in general, and it doesn't really matter that they're using merge to do it. It's just not something that they understand how to do. So as much as it's not necessarily in line with just being a purely Sublime channel, I think that makes sense. But to what degree do we do something like this? Because I don't want to go into the entire nitty gritty with a 15-minute video on content-based address systems and SHA-1 cryptographic hashing and how that means that it's not password protected. It just means that there's no chance of collision and you can't reverse engineer the content from the hash and all that stuff. That's a little bit too low level for what we want to teach with this sort of stuff. But you can just drop them in the Discord, anywhere in the chat or in the YouTube. Probably YouTube is best for that, unless I created a live stream channel. I can't even remember. But yeah, feel free. You can, in theory, I have no problem with anybody posting links in the chat. It just so happens that YouTube is being a butt and is blocking them. But yeah, somewhere in the Discord under YouTube, probably a fine place for something like that. Feel free. When it comes to talking about the underpinnings of Git, how important do you guys think it would be to make distinctions about the working directory versus the repository versus the staging area? Because I've seen it go both ways, where people talk about Git and they just say, now you're going to add this file to the commit and then you're going to commit, and they don't really explain that what you're technically doing is setting up something in the staging area or the index, depending on how you want to call that. Some people go into great detail on that. I personally prefer that because I like to know how things work, but it can be perhaps a little overwhelming. I'm not sure how that might work out for something like that. But then also, you do need to touch on it a little bit because of the idea that Git diff shows you different things. If you partially stage some of a file and not the rest, then the Git diff only shows you some of the changes because it doesn't consider the other ones to be changes because they're committed and ready to go, and you have to use the the - stage to do it. Yeah, exactly, right. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on that, but I don't want to go too shallow, if that makes any sense. To a large degree, also, the stuff that I'm thinking about here is at least partially predicated on the idea that the people from my team could watch this and have something to refer to. So there's that as well as something to think about. Yeah, that's the same thought that I had there, Ben. But I like external validation on stuff like that because, as I've mentioned, I got the new headset for this, for example, and comes in this fancy little case. But there's a little manual in here. I had read through that a couple of times and looked to see if there was any other information on using this and specs and stuff, like 2 weeks before it actually arrived in the mail, because I love knowing the nitty gritty for stuff. So I am like all over, at some level, even getting into the whole business of look inside the Git directory. There's an objects directory. Now look inside this file. See how funky that name is? Now do the SHA-1 command on it. See how it's the same? Whoop, this is how Git tracks stuff. That's probably way more low level than anybody needs. But knowing about the staging area, partially staging stuff, especially, with that whole... And that's actually something that came up today. That's one, actually. And I think that was in the Discord. Somebody said that just recently, if I'm remembering correctly. If not, it was on the forum, but I think it was in the Discord. And I pointed out, like, git add doesn't just add files to the repository. It adds things to commits, which is actually something my coworker stumbled over as well. And so... that was definitely one of those things that you sort of have to get your head around. I also found it enlightening for myself to the revelation that the staging area, when you add stuff to it or add chunks and whatnot, the staging area is what essentially becomes the new commit when you say git commit, right? So you're basically adding and subtracting stuff to the soup pot that is the commit, that is the index, and then when you hit commit, that's when it takes that data and snapshots it in, which is also helps to explain how git reset also is manipulating the contents of that stuff in relation to what's currently in the working directory. So that's one thing. The whole idea, as I mentioned, my coworker had an issue where she was working on something and she needed to go work on something else very briefly just to do a quick little 2-line change. She needed to change a 4 to a 6. And she went on the internet and looked to see how can I set these changes aside. And someone said, rightly so, if you want to do that, you can just use a git stash and save your changes, and then you check out and away you go. And that worked for her, but unfortunately for her, she stashed her unsaved changes, created a new branch, and then applied the stash to the new branch, and then made 2 changes and committed it. So she essentially inadvertently merged partial changes that she didn't intend to, and we had to untangle that a little bit. And then she ran into the other problem where she tried to git stash a pop a second time, and it ended up being a stash from 4 months ago. So yeah, there is that, and the other thing is that there, which may even be the thing that Ben was saying, because I take, I added this file to the commit. Why is it still asking me to add it? To mean the thing that hello Ashwin, welcome to tonight's stream. Hope the morning is treating you well. There was the situation where someone said, well, I don't need to git add this because I've already added the file that's being tracked by Git. And you have to say, well, no, it is, but you have to add any changes you want to make. You have to add them to the commit that you're making, even if the repository is already tracking them. That's one way to take that. And then the other way is you can git add a file and then modify the file again, and now it appears to be staged and it appears to be unstaged because there's unstaged changes, which is also weird to sort of wrap your head around that particular thing. I bet that's awesome. I found playing with this thing here, and Ashwin, there's a link to this up a little ways in the chat. For some reason, YouTube's still not allowing anybody to post links, unfortunately. Oh. I just saw your links there, Mike/McGriddles. Thanks. Oh, the other thing was, and did we talk about this thing? I can't remember if it was in a live stream here. If this is the correct thing. Might not be the right one. Can't type, won't type. No. It's linking back to my page. What the heck was the name of that thing? What the Git? Oh my Git? I can't remember what it was. It's something that I posted in the. I don't think I have the link still open here. Shoot. But it's basically something like this, but as an open-ended puzzle game thing. There's a link to it in the Sublime Text Discord, and I'll have to look that up later. That I thought would also be a fun thing. Oh, it's org. Oh, alrighty. Let's see. Boop, boop, boop. Should have known. Like so. Hey, look, man. Oh, all right. Still don't like that, huh? Which part of it was the first part? Because I can't remember now. I remember someone saying that it wasn't as open-ended as it could be. What the Git? Shoot. Let's do this. I can click a thing for a second while chat goes on in the window underneath me and comes up with the same answer more quickly. In theory. Really? That text doesn't appear anywhere in here, huh? That doesn't seem correctly right. Oh, do I? Oh, balls. I am not a fan of that, for sure. Look, I swear I know how to use the internet, okay? There we go. Now it's remembering it. I am not a fan of this whole mechanism where the protocol disappears and turns into a lock, or a lock with a line through it, or whatever, if you get it wrong. I want to see the thing that I put in there. I'm an old fuddy-duddy like that. And even after all this time, I'm still not used to it. This is the thing. Thank you, Ben, for clearing up my inability to type URLs or remember stuff, because it's been a couple of weeks. I thought that I had a link to that open over here, because I have another browser window over on the right with 7 billion tabs in it, as you do. This is sort of a fun little. This is what gave me the idea for the when I said that I remembered there being something that could draw something like this, and Ashwin was the one that said what you want is d3.js, which led me over to this thing and its ability to do that. Hello, welcome in. How's your day going so far? Ooh, animation, cool. Perhaps you could create something like this. It uses the Godot game engine. But I am doing well, thank you so much. We're discussing here potential updates to the channel, or well, we're going to be doing videos on Sublime Merge and Git in general. And we're just discussing what people would find most helpful out of that, how much detail is too much detail, various tools for helping to learn Git. And this is one that I came up with first. I can't remember, I think it was my coworker came up with it, which I thought would be great as a learning exercise, because it shows you the graph. And also, if you download this and play with it, and I don't know if I played it a little bit on Twitch or not, but it's got two ways to play. One is there's, you can sort of see it in the screenshot here. There's little cards with the Git commands, and you can drag them and drop them. But it also has a little terminal on the right. And unlike this one, this is like a literal, honest-to-God Git running in a terminal behind the scenes. There's actually a temporary directory with Git repositories in it that you're actually manipulating. So it's quite cool. Now, someone from the Discord played through it and said it wasn't quite as open-ended as it could be, or it asked you to do something and he did it in a way that wasn't using the commands, and the result was the same, but it didn't catch that it was that thing. But I think it would be like a great learning exercise if anybody had time to learn something like that. Yeah, and the thing that's a good point, Mike. The reason why I dug into this today is because despite the fact that I gave the advice that if there's files you want to get rid of, use git status. One of the things it's going to tell you is how to get rid of changes you don't want. With git, I would use git checkout, but now there's like an actual command for that, because I'm like old school or I can't remember stuff. I specifically pointed out, be careful with that, because it's going to flick your change away and it'll be gone more or less forever. Don't do that. Don't git restore a file if you're not sure that you don't want the changes. And she said, okay. And then she did it, and then she said, my changes are gone. Fortunately, she's unfamiliar enough with Git that she's a little paranoid about it, that she created a zip file of her repository before she started futzing around with it, so that things might go wrong. And then another coworker said, yeah, tarballs are your friend with this. I don't entirely trust it. And exactly, right? Oh, what's in a GitHub student pack? I'm not familiar with that. Do you get access to various kinds of software or something like that? I don't think she ever had it committed. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure what a GitHub student pack is. No, well, it sounds vaguely familiar as something I've heard about, but I've never looked into it, because I'm sadly not. Well, I'm a student of the ages, but I'm not in a official thing. It does, but I don't think in this particular case, she didn't stash something. She was trying something else. The other thing, we did manage to get everything back the way that it was supposed to be, with just redacting basically one commit. Oh, that's cool. Free stuff is always great for learning. Um, but yeah, so in this case, I'm not entirely sure what steps she did to do it, but there wasn't anything in there. Um, but another coworker said the same thing. Now, when I was learning Git, my policy on that was before I did something that I was unsure of, I would clone a second copy of the repository and fiddle around in there. Uh, Now I'm familiar enough with stuff that I know that as long as stuff is committed, I'm always going to be able to get back to a good state. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I'm past the zip file level, but I did want to, give them a little bit of a help on this sort of operation here. Um, the way that they parrot back commands sometimes in a way that makes it seem like they don't fully understand what it is it's going to do uh, is an unfortunate thing. I'm familiar with that. I used JetBrains products for several years before I went to Sublime. I used IntelliJ for a while. I was on a Java kick, and then I started doing iOS development, so I got myself app code because Xcode made me sad. Uh, and then from there, I think they switched up their scheme so that you basically got a subscription to everything. I actually bought a copy of Sea Lion because I was doing C stuff, but I was unhappy because I wasn't using a 64-bit computer at the time, so I couldn't run it. And also, I'm not a fan of CMake. Our software uses traditional Make, so I couldn't use it for the purpose to which I was going to, because I'm not rewriting our build system to use not CMake, and it just was not compatible with stuff. I have pondered that myself as well, Ashwin. I've actually tried to. They've expressed interest in themselves in wanting the tool that I use for Git, but they insist on using what's built into Visual Studio Code because they're familiar with working with source control in Visual Studio. So I let that, like I always say, whatever tool makes you the most productive, that's good. They are doing some Git stuff command line only, but whenever they ask a question about stuff, and if there's something in reference to Visual Studio Code, I'm like, I'm gonna guess that that means this, but I've never really used it, so I'm not sure. Quick aside, on Twitch, one of the things you can do is set up a community challenge where everybody donates their channel points, or in my case, features, to get me to do something. Various things like that are, dance, sing a song, something like that. I know that I'm interested in that per se, but one thing I thought would be funny is a community challenge to gather 80,000 channel points to make me spend an entire stream working with Visual Studio Code instead of Sublime to see what might happen. Yeah, my advice on Git is generally the same as well. There, Mike. You definitely you want to know what's happening behind the scenes. It's sort of an extension of knowing how Git's working behind the scenes, because you need to know that to know which command you need to run, what that command's going to do. Or, like Ben said, you're going to get yourself into a weird situation where you're not sure how to get out of it because you don't really know what it is that the commands you're doing are doing. And another aspect of that is knowing what the commands actually are. One of the things I love about Merge is how it tells you exactly what it was that it was doing. I'm willing to use channel points to make myself use Visual Studio Code for like a whole stream or for like a whole week's worth of streams, except on YouTube, because that would be a pretty weird Sublime Text stream. Nothing is going to make me use Emacs. I know exactly enough Emacs to get myself out of Emacs when something accidentally puts me in Emacs. Although that's really less of a thing with the graphical version. You can just click the X. But indeed, I was trying to do the math on how to set something like that up, because you can specify as many channel points as you want. It's completely up to me. So you have to say like the average viewer on Twitch gets 220 channel points or bugs or features. They're features, not bugs, per hour on average. If you're actively watching and you click that little green box that appears, you can gain them a little bit more. And if you're a subscriber, there's a multiplier that makes them grow a little bit faster. But exactly, Mike, and I'm just not a fan of Emacs in general. So I'm thinking like 220 per hour times, 2 or 2.5 per stream times 2 for streams in a week times 4 for streams in a month, because you get like 30 days to do it. Try to figure on the average number of people that I'd like to have watching the channel, and then use that to figure out how many channel points that there are. But it's really the only thing that I can think of as something that I'd put in there that's not one of the default ones, like stretch or drink some water or something. Because if anybody knows, if anything, a channel point redemption to make me not drink coffee is probably more likely to hurt me than getting me to take a drink of something, because I'm constantly doing that sort of thing. But so yeah, this is part of what we're going to be doing. I don't really have a timeline on that per se, except to say that it's probably sped up by finding this ready-made thing with the D3 library that you pointed me at there, Ashwin. I can't remember if I said that before, but thanks for that, because I knew it was a thing, and I knew I could probably work something out, but having something to base that on directly, and that means I could make the page have a green screen background and be able to display it the way that I like. It's going to work out really well. I actually like Lisp as a concept as well. I mean, I've never really done a lot in it, but I like the idea. Probably I would like the idea less if I did more in it. I've never really liked I guess, and this is really unfair because I haven't really used Emacs all that much. To be perfectly honest, most of the reason why I'm a Vim guy and not a VI guy is because 20 whatever years ago, when I started using Linux full time, the guy that knew about this because he had been using Linux for even longer than me happened to be a VI guy for whatever reason. So he was, we all used what he used. Just sort of, how that sort of thing goes. You see somebody using a thing, you use it, you ask them questions, you get yourself up to speed, which is most of the reason. There's nothing really philosophical about why I chose VI over Emacs, except for that. But I have had to use it in the past, and it just seems clunkily weird that practically everything you do is a minimum of 2 key chords, if not more. I may, in fact, use that for some stuff. Yeah. This is one of those things, where I've said a couple of times in a couple of different mediums, I need some animation software to do animations. And then someone would say, like, maybe I can help you with that. What kind of animations do you want to make? And I can't really put my finger on it. I know what I want to make, and I know that I could make it manually, but I want a tool to do it for me automatically, and I can't really put my finger on exactly what that thing might be. But definitely for displaying graphs of stuff, I think that's going to be like awesome for that, especially since there's also animations in here as well, right? You can see things, them all coming in, or it even lets you do stuff like this, although it needs a little bit of work. 726F. You can do stuff like this. Oh, no, not a good idea to make commits while in a detached head state. Yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, the animations that are in there, or doing this and getting to see the other commits that are related to this, and then doing the merges and watching the merge actually happen, really makes it, I think, more easier to understand than seeing the graph before and seeing the graph after. It's easier to grok when you see it actually going. Remember the potential delay there. Should still work though. It's the only thing that does currently, if it continues to work. Uh-oh. Well, that's an unfortunate turn of events. that won't happen once we switch to the other bot. Now I'm kind of worried because the thing that's doing that is the thing that's the Stream Deck, and it seems to be running just fine. But Nightbot runs in the cloud, and everything tends to be slow in general. Related to not Git type things, but that was a good digression on what would be handy to have in something like that, and what I think people would like to see, or what other technical people think would be a good idea to teach, which is probably another good way to say that. Particularly if you're working in a situation where you have to teach other people. Yeah, right. I think that really helps a fair bit. If I had to complain about this, I'd like the commit hashes to be a little bit, just a tiny bit bigger font-wise, and the commands that you can use to check stuff out requires you to type the whole thing. But all in all, super cool thing to help visualize that stuff. And I'm imagining I could capture a video and play it back a little bit slower. Even you can watch it merging the stuff in. So the other thing, and hands up in the chat if you watched yesterday's video. It is, yeah, I have a version of it that I've been fiddling with that because based on these different things that you click on, like this one has a tiny little thing, whereas these other ones have a, well, that's a bad example. Nah. These ones have a taller one. I'd like them all to be the same size. The idea is twofold. I want to have some classes, some videos on Git in general, because when it comes to talking about merge, I think it's going to be better overall to have a merge video where you say, and this is how we can do a commit, and this is how we can do a rebase, and here we're squashing some commits, and this is how you use the blame. And there can be a little card on the bottom that says, if you don't understand what blame is, you go check this out. Or do you not know what a rebase is? No problem, video on that. Or if you can't visualize this, here's a video on that. Sort of like a referral thing. Kind of what I've been doing on YouTube for a while now, trying to build up sort of a back catalog of bigger-ish videos. They're a little bit long at this point. I should probably redo some of them to split them up, that have like, so you don't know how key bindings work? Here's a video that teaches you how a key binding works and how a context works. And there's probably even a playlist for that. And then in other videos going forward, I can just make a passing reference to, if you don't know how key bindings work, check the link in the description. And everything sort of refers back, which also, drives viewership on the channel, which is a nice side benefit of that. And I think something like that for Git is also going to be important as well. Because as I said earlier, you might not have been here. Most of the time when I get questions about Sublime Merge, they're not about merge per se so much as they are questions about not understanding how Git works in general, if that makes sense. It's not like a question of like, how do I rebase in Git? It's a question of, how do I take this commit or how do I want to move this code to a different branch, but I don't know how to do it. And the answer would be like a cherry pick or a rebase or something like that. Side note, I'd really like the people on the team to use rebases more than just merges when they're pulling other changes down to make life a little bit nicer as far as the graph is concerned. But the idea of potentially having to untangle commits on a more ready basis makes me a little bit leery of that whole operation. Hands up in the chat if you watched yesterday's video, which is the first video in the upcoming series on power editing tips in Sublime, which was driven by that conversation that happened in the Sublime Text Discord last week, or I guess it must have been last week. I can't remember exactly when, where someone just said, hey, today I learned about this whole quick add next thing to add multiple selections. And someone else was like, oh, I can't believe I didn't know about that before. Which, reminded me of various other things that I've managed to surprise people with in videos. Like for example, that and the classic example that the panel chooser, you can right click on this little icon down here to get a list of all the panels to open them up. If you lose one. Hello, Epidiah, welcome. So what I'm looking for is other examples of stuff like that. Yeah, see, the soft undo is another big one that people tend to like, and I don't think that that's necessarily a thing that is that common. I don't think. Um, so that also comes up as one of the classic examples of stuff like that. You can see I have a clone of that repository that I was poking around inside of earlier, the one we were just looking at there. Whoops. Yeah, I kind of figured you might, Ben. There's other stuff in there too that and this also sort of brought that to the forefront. The idea that if you have one or more than one selection and everything that's selected is a number, it gets summed automatically in the status bar so that you can see, which again, like I don't think it's stated in the changelog, but it is in the changelog that this is a new feature that it seems like something that would be exceptionally handy for a web developer if you had like a bunch of divs that had a certain width and you were trying to figure out how big the parent was supposed to be. You could just run through selecting stuff and then figure out exactly how big they are, which seems like a pretty handy thing, right? The other thing that was in there, which blew Fichtfall's mind as well, based on his emoticon thing there. It was whoops. Of course, if you have stuff that's like a big selection and you want to do something on each individual line, you can split the selection into lines with key binding easily, right? But if you select something that is a line of text and it doesn't have a new line in it, new in Sublime Text 4, same key binding splits it on words instead. So if you wanted to have a comma separated list of stuff, that's really easy to do now, which has come in handy a time or two in recent memory, just with stuff that I was doing at work. For a list of different types of stock types that someone blapped out, like stock, bond, municipal bond, preferred stock, warrant, blah, blah, blah. There's like tons of ways that goes. Call, put, options, call option, put option, blah. Less interesting here than the idea that someone just gave a giant string of them and I was doing something where I needed to set up sort of like a JSON object store for stock data that was incoming, and I needed to know stuff like that. So with that list, it was really easy to do something like this and just say, I want all these things, I want them like this, and there we go. Now, of course, this one's a little bit crunky because there were already commas in there, something you have to look at, but that's sort of a handy thing as well. Yeah, that's not something that comes up very often, realistically, as something that you might want to do. Use Control-T to swap the order of things. What's Control-T to swap the order of things? Ooh, neat. That's one I haven't used in a while. Now that you say that, I have a vague memory of way back, unless this is a Sublime Text 4 thing, in which case I'm completely misremembering. But there's a thing in VI that can do the same sort of thing, or we had our own custom map for a key that did that, and I remember thinking like, oh hey, check that out. But this is why I often say, you know what can be fun? Just tool through menus and see what it is that you can do in here that might make your life a little bit better. Like, the key binding that I use quite frequently for deleting whole lines when I'm moving stuff around. Something else that I was going to put in that video that I never did is the idea of grabbing lines and moving them around. So if you have like a block of code and you need to, move this down and over one, or indent it and move it up or something, really fast ways to restructure your code. Something else that I had on the list there. I had a few things in the list, and then in the dry runs for what I was actually going to put in the video and talking about it, it ended up being just slightly longer than I wanted it to be for the stuff that I put in there. Because I wanted to describe it a little bit well. For cutting, also works good. That's also one of those pro tip things that copy and paste or copy and cut will do the whole line if you don't have any selection, unless you have that setting turned off. I know there's a couple of people that have been cheesed about that one. Hello, Robert. Yeah, I use this one all the time, moving lines up and down, indenting stuff. More frequently, I accidentally fold stuff when I didn't mean to, but that can be handy as well in combination with the commands in the selection menu for expanding selections out. You can, if you wanted to fold up, say like a function in Python, you can sort of get stuff going. Yeah, the key for that is Control Shift up and down, at least on Linux. I'm pretty sure that's the same on Windows as well. I can't say for Mac off the top of my head because I do have one. It's over here running the stream thing. But more often than not, I have to look up key bindings when I work on that. I don't do it very often. I don't duplicate lines that often. For that, I tend to do the copy paste type operation instead. And this is like puts me in mind of my coworker that uses VI and taught me to use VI as well over all the years that we were working together. Anytime that I wanted to be like, how do I do a thing again? And more often than not, the response would be, hang on a second, watch my hands. And then he'd just do the thing. And then you look at his hands to see what exactly he was doing. And to be like, oh, I say you make a mark there and then motion to the end and then call back the mark with the yank. Gotcha. Okay, that's cool. And then, anytime you look it up, there's like 10 other ways to do the exact same thing. An app that shows your keystrokes for streams. Ooh, interesting. Is there one of those that works for X? Do you know one offhand? I remember looking into doing something like that when I was first getting ready to make videos on YouTube, because I thought it would be handy to have a record of what it was I was typing displaying on the bottom as things were going on. But in the end, I decided not to go that way because in every video I find that does that, they tend to just use it for everything, and then it gets a little overwhelming. Like, I don't need to see the characters you're typing while you're typing text. I can see the text happening in there. And the ones that I found at the time, which was a few years ago now, you'd have to remember to turn it on and off, and I didn't think I was going to be able to do that. Well, let's see. X11 keyboard capture for screencasting. Screen key, you say? Just happens to be the first hit here under linuxuprising.com. My eyes. Now with Python 3 and GTK support. I think I might have had this installed on my older system. Is there a link to this in here anywhere? Probably not, huh? Whoops. Doesn't look like there are that many great matches for your search, huh? You'd think there would be any. Maybe I should spell it correctly. What to say? That seems like the way to go. Pin phone? Is that like Pine Phone without the E? Oh, it's now read only. Hmm. Bu -bu -bu. Does anybody... We're all making typos at the same time. I know you just did that to make me feel better. Get experts in the chat. Is there a way that you know of to look at the list of forks for a repository and know which one is farthest ahead as regards new commits from the place where it was forked? Because I've never been able to figure something like that out, and there's like far too many of these things. There's probably something in the README. There we go. Ah, good grief. Screencaster keys. Unfortunately, available on other distributions. Is one of them Slackware? Oh, look at that. Yeah, it might. I'm sort of hoping that there's just sort of, a way to tell. Yeah, I know, right? One of the, unfortunately, not every site responds well to this. And if it's dynamic, sometimes it goes all squirrely. But I had this idea of a full screen rectangle that's behind the chat and behind me that is some level of gray that's like 50% transparent as a blast shield that could come up. No, Slackware is its own beast. Yeah, see? Setup tools, Git, Python. The issue with Slackware, such as it is that it is a package-based system. It does have the ability to create and install packages. As a matter of fact, I had to do that just earlier for Discord. It said that there was an update, and then when I clicked the button, it showed me the, hey, you can have a new Debian version of this. What it doesn't have is a system that looks inside of a package for all of the dependencies and then goes and downloads all of those packages and then looks inside of those packages to find their dependencies, to go back out to the internet again to find those packages ad infinitum until eventually you've downloaded the entire internet and hopefully everything worked. It doesn't do that. And as far as I can gather, and it's been a long time, so don't quote me this, is that the developer of it, Patrick Voterking, the reason why it doesn't have GNOME in it is because dependencies are a gigantic pain in the tuchus. So his package system doesn't have that. There's actually something called slapt-get, which is like apt-get, but for Slackware. But basically, we could do a little something like saw. This one may be more complicated than something that I'd want to do on the stream. But for example, let's say you want to download Discord, right? There is a lot of stuff that is built from source. I tend to think of Slackware as the build from source thing a lot of the time, but you don't have to do that. So we might say we go here and it says for Linux, 64-bit Linux required. We hit it. What do we want to get in here? And we could say we want the Debian package for this. I've never actually tried the tarball version of this. Back when I first started using Slackware, when I first started using Discord under Slackware, there was only the one. But I have this very simple script, like so. I have a bunch of them in here, and we look in here. And so there is this discord.slack build, which turns Debian package into the kind of package that this distribution uses, which, as you can see, is a very simple restructure operation. Why Slackware? Historically, because when we first started using Linux, we used Red Hat for a while, but it was a pain in the butt to get stuff going for what it was that we were doing at the time. Think like 20 years ago, 20-ish years ago. But the distribution that we collectively had the most history using, I guess is the best way to say that, is Slackware. Oh, like someone liked the description I made of why their snippet doesn't seem to open, and it doesn't seem to appear in the command palette. So getting back to your question there, easily distracted. The distribution that we had the most experience with, I guess is probably the best way to say that, is Slackware. So we started using that in the interim for our own stuff locally, and then it turned out that we started running our software on Linux as part of our servers. That's part of that history of the project as a whole, which started on a Nextcube, and then we ran it under OpenStep, and then we ran it under Rhapsody. For a little while, we ran it under something called Yellowbox, which was something that you could get for Solaris and for Windows that provided the OpenStep runtimes for those platforms to be able to run Objective-C programs there. Ostensibly kind of a closed source version of what GNU-step eventually became. I think GNU-step came out because that was a proprietary thing. Yeah, so we were running our stuff in production on Spark boxes because we happened to have a bunch of them, and a conglomeration of other boxes running Rhapsody and OpenStep, and then we switched to using Slackware because we needed to update some systems quickly, and it's easier to get a Linux system running than it was to get an OpenStep box running, if I remember correctly. The terms are right. The exact interleaving of how that happens in time, I'm probably misremembering the order of things because it was 20 years ago. But and then inertia. It's the one that I've been using for the last 20 years. Largely because, much like Vim, that's the one that I was introduced to the most. But I like the way that it works. I have a hard time actually using other distributions like not Debian, Ubuntu, the popular one, because when I want to start up a new system and configure the network, I know to come to the startup scripts, and I don't have permission to edit that because I'm not root right now, but I come to the init scripts to configure stuff. Having to go through dialogues to do that for me is confusing to me because I'm not used to seeing them that way, and the options are a little bit different. Also, if you're not a fan of systemd, Slackware is the only distribution that I'm aware of that doesn't use it. So it's the one holdout. So it's got that going for it too, for good or for ill. Based on my experience with CentOS, because some of the VMs that we're using at work are CentOS related, because who's ever in charge of setting up our VMs is a CentOS guy, I think is the reason for that. I don't think there's any other. He's got like an image that he can easily plop into a VM. Not a super fan of systemd, again, largely because I'm used to doing things this way. But the log files are weirdly binary in a way that makes it tricky to just tail var log messages, at least on that system. But I don't have a ton of experience with that per se. I go with what I know, and it helps me get my job done faster. But for example, when I want to upgrade stuff, yeah, there's a lot to pick from. Like I say, that's an unfortunate thing too. That was actually a problem. One of the funnier problems, I may have related this story before, way back in the day, when we were first starting with the company. there were four of us in Vancouver doing stuff, and the rest of our company is based in Mississauga, in Ontario. And we spent a bunch of time, around the clock working our system to get it done enough to replace something that the head office uh, had a drop dead on date. One of their data vendors was going away on this date, and we needed to be able to get ourselves into a position to replace them before that happened, which is how they ended up buying the company that I was working for to begin with. So we spent a lot of hours working on getting everything up to snuff. And it ended up with a couple of us had to go to Toronto to work on stuff there, while the other two of us stayed local to work here, and things were going across like that. Everything worked out great, and then we had to all go to Toronto to be able to teach people how to set up the system and how to use it. And they very carefully got us four systems, brought them into a room, got everybody all situated in there with desks so that we could start teaching. They had their system administrator come in and install Red Hat on everything, because we were using Red Hat very briefly for some reason. I think I mentioned before we ditched it later on, because by default it doesn't install any server tools. So right off the bat, the first thing we had to do was go back through the installation a second time. Yeah, I mean, there's like a ton of distributions, so whichever one works the best is totally the one that a person should be using, I think. I have a tiny fist shake on for Ubuntu and Debian as far as distributions are concerned, primarily because if I have a problem with something and I need to Google to say, like, why is this behaving this way? How do I fix this? The first 37 pages in the Google search results are someone saying, I had a problem. Did you apt-yum this package? Yes. Problem solved. Thanks. And I mean, that's great if you're using those distributions, but if you're compiling it yourself, then you kind of need to know how things are actually working, and the search stuff is kind of muddied up a little bit. But I digress. But this is something that Ben asked a little ways back. How do you keep stuff up to date? One way is this. So this is turning the Debian package into package that the package tools for this distribution can understand, which again is basically just unpacking it and then repacking it up in a slightly different way. And now I have a package file there, and I could upgrade package and point it at that, which I'm not going to do because it's currently running right now, right? There's a regular process that runs that talks to the head server where the versions of Slackware are, and downloads all of the newer package versions that have security fixes and stuff, and then it basically it doesn't have to repackage them because they're already correct. It just sort of does that, and there's like a little shell script that it runs to do the whole thing. Really? I've never heard that. I mean, philosophically, I have no problem with it, except for how it stops me from being able to solve my own problems. And it's I guess the other thing is like the Unity window manager, if that's what that's called, which is reads very Mac-like to me, is different than what I'm used to. So when I have to use a system like that, I feel like I'm fumbling around a little bit because it's not something I'm used to, which is absolutely nothing to do with that, just so much as my own preferences for stuff, right? What do you think of Herd? Have you ever tried the Herd kernel? I hear GNU Herd is coming any day now. That used to be one of the jokes around the office for a while. Or GNOME is something else that I haven't used in a long while as a windowing environment, primarily because Slackware doesn't come with it because it's there's so many dependencies. It really is dependency hell when anything updates because they're when you're this is the issue, right? If you're running your own distribution, then you need to create packages for your distribution or use someone else's format. And if you create your own and you're doing something like GNOME where there's like 7.5 trillion libraries and updating one of them requires you to update 3.5 million other ones as well, that's not the sort of thing you want to be doing on an ongoing basis, which I think, if you look into it, is the reason why Patrick Voter King decided that GNOME isn't going to be part of the core distribution. There are people out there that have the packages like all ready to go. So if I wanted it, it's easy to do. I just, I'm used to the one that I use. Perl is still around, huh? I haven't seen anybody do anything Perl based in like forever. Based on the stuff that I do in Linux and stuff, it really seems like Perl was supplanted by people talking about Ruby and Python more than Perl. Is the thing still apply where the nice thing about Perl is that there's 14 ways to do everything? Oh, I get you. One of those, huh? Ouch. Ruby is a language that I really feel like I should learn, but every time I try to sit down with the book and look at it, the syntax makes my brain turn off. Pardon me for that. So I will indeed look into this as something to do through a stream. I think that would probably be quite handy. I'll move that over to the giant window of stuff, but I don't necessarily want to get into that at this particular juncture. What other tips are... Ow. Hang on a second. I have this minor issue with the office in that we put a carpet under my chair and then that couldn't roll the chair very good. So we got a mat to put on top of the carpet. And now once the wheels are in place for a set period of time, they make a little divot and then the wheels don't want to move. I do not remember that one. No. Funny though. I never really did much Python related until I got into using Sublime, as a matter of fact. I think I've mentioned that before. I'm not really sure why, per se. Probably, if I had to guess, some weird nonsense like I don't want to use a language where white space is important at the start of a line, like that makes any difference to anything. It's the only thing that I can think of. I don't think I ever really did anything that, well, I mean, when it comes down to using Perl or Python, I was probably using Lua for that. I have had a custom Lua interpreter that had a whole bunch of pack-in libraries that I used as my go-to for stuff. Should revisit that one time. That would be super cool. Regarding the ability to transpose things, which is neat because it works on a selection by or left right if you just have stuff or whole words. What's a good real world use case for something like that? Do you just use it for when there's a typo? Something that I used to use a lot in VI is CW to replace the current word with something. Or when I needed to start typing somewhere or make a little fix. I think I can't remember what the thing is that does the transpose automatically in VI because it's been so long. But I can't remember any specific use for that. I don't have my buzzcode lorem ipsum in here. That's an unfortunate turn of events. Yep. Or uh, the big motions that you generally use, O because you want to start typing underneath something, capital O because you want to go above it. Uh, I would do $$ to start the new line from scratch, or CW to start a change with the current word, replacing the current word with something else. And very occasionally uh, R and then a letter if I know that there's like a weird one character typo, because it's a little bit faster that way. Apart from that, it's really hard to say how I would normally do stuff, because after so many years of using the same tool, you just sort of get into the muscle memory of stuff doing. I do not vintage in Sublime, no. Or I think Neo Vintagious is like right up there for Vim emulations. Also 6, but I'm not sure if 6 is still around, because I think it was being worked on by the same person who was also working on the unofficial documentation, and he just sort of disappeared from the internet a few months ago. Can't remember. But although I do use VI, I used it for 20 years. When I'm doing something on a server, when I'm doing something in a terminal, I'm using VI as my editor. Well, I mean, technically Vim, but, aliased to VI. So one of the first things I do when I install a new installation of my my distribution, is change the default symlink, because it like defaults Vile or Elvis to VI instead of Vim, which is always the sad maker. And then the second thing I do is compile my own Vim with encryption turned off, so that I can't accidentally encrypt my file if I hold down Shift too long when I save and quit with a :X. But when it comes to using other stuff like Sublime or other graphical tools, I like to have a distinct separation there. I don't tend to use VI motion keys or stuff like that in Sublime, because I use the Sublime keys for that instead. Hey, awesome. And that's one of the great things, right? How easy it is to to do get things working exactly the way that you want. And if you used JetBrains tools, then you know that for a lot of stuff works a certain way, because that's how they think everybody works. For example, their code formatter for reformatting your code, which is a great idea and it's pretty customizable, but it was lacking customization in a couple of places that it made it do stuff that I didn't want it to do, and then it sort of feels bad to use the feature as a whole. I feel like if you're gonna, you either need to not make it configurable and say this is what your code's gonna look like, or you need to make it configurable enough that anybody can make anything look like whatever they want. And at the time, it didn't quite get there for me. Pardon me. Just, we go. But which video did you use for that, Mike? Was it one of the ones on how to find keys? Because I need to, I think, do a little bit of a video on that now, because this is now the cool thing. Spell it right, though. And now it's automatically logging, which is going to make turning this on and off so much nicer than it was before, because I do like this to turn it on, and then when you want to turn it off, you do that, and then there's like a bunch of extra commands in there. Totally love view package file to be able to look at stuff. This took away 98% of the reason why I had package resource viewer installed for a long period of time. because you want to be able to look inside of stuff. I like this better than Package Resource Viewer because it opens the file in a way where you can't accidentally edit it, whereas it's very easy in Package Resource Viewer to create an override if you accidentally save the file after you open it, which I think has probably caused a fair amount of confusion for people. You know, we don't see it so much now as back. But there'd be like an update, and then someone's like, "Well, that's not working for me. I'm not seeing this," or the ever popular, "Why isn't this new setting in the default settings? It should be in the default settings." And the answer to that is, it is in the default settings. If you don't see it, you probably accidentally created an override on that file. Not something we see so much in the last couple of years since the command palette was introduced and the view package file came in. If you don't already use it, Override Audit has the ability to do the same thing as well. But it's more directly named at what you would use that for, so that it's hopefully less of an accident. And if you're using that, you have Override Audit installed, which is going to let you know if you actually did that by accident. Does that stand for yet another Python formatter by any chance? Yeah, that's the other thing there. I don't have it installed right now. I no longer recommend Package Resource Viewer, although I still have a video on it for two reasons. One, it has an extract package, and two, it has extract all packages. And if you were to accidentally hit one of those two when you didn't mean to, when you wanted to open a resource, your life becomes quite hellish to untangle. Perhaps made a little bit better with Override Audit, but that it doesn't confirm. I don't have any objection to extract package or extract all packages, but it should pop up a dialog box that says, you do realize if you do this, this package is never going to update again, right? And you're not going to get any updates, right? To let people know exactly what it is that is happening there. I think that's sort of a relic of the Sublime Text 2 days, where packages weren't read from Sublime package files at runtime. It would start up and grab the content of all of them and blap them out into the packages folder directly as unpacked files. So having a command to do that would be like a handy bootstrap if you updated things. But then in Sublime Text 3, it gained the ability to just load files directly out of Sublime package files, so that you could do something like create an actual override to make an update to a package, which I gather wasn't really possible in Sublime Text 2, because if you were to make a modification to a package file, the next time the package updated, it would just blap over top of the whole thing with the new extracted copy, which is why Override Audit doesn't support Sublime Text 2. I would have implemented support for that, but it just isn't possible there. I've never heard of anybody wanting to do it, but I have seen someone that did it by accident when they didn't mean to. And it is a pickle to unravel. I don't think Override Audit existed at the time, but it's one of those packages that I created because I wanted to be able to know when overrides existed. But I think there was like a Stack Overflow question where someone was being cranky because their Sublime did not seem to be having any cool new features, and no matter how many times it says it updates, nothing changes, and essentially it came back that they had somehow extracted every package in their Sublime Text 3, so no matter how many times the default packages update, it's always using the other ones anyway. And if you know that you did that by accident and you never tried to make any sort of modification on purpose, that's pretty easy to fix, because all you really have to do is delete everything but the user folder while Sublime is stopped, and then restart it, and package control will bring back anything that it needs to, and everything will mostly be okay. But if there's even the slightest chance that you did make some sort of a tweak, now good luck unraveling which one of the 500 files you unpacked it's safe to delete and which ones aren't, which was a large part of the reason why Override Audit has the ability to show you a diff of all packages or overrides from the whole system, as opposed to just being able to show you the stuff that it does now. Like, for example, the perennial example for that for me is the paste from history plugin that comes in the default package. I have an override on this, so because by default when you use it, it displays a little pop-up menu with one line of text, and I like to have a little bit more context. So I use a quick panel for mine so that I can see more stuff there. So I have an override on that, and now Override Audit tells me about that, and thanks to the incremental diff functionality, which kind of is hard to see because of the sidebar that I have there, really shrinks that thing down. But if I was to do this, you can see exactly the changes that I made to this to be able to see what's different. It used to be show pop-up menu, now it's show quick panel, and this thing. I find this like super helpful, more so than just having the file there, being able to tell that there's an override and being able to see exactly what is in it, which is even a far cry above how we used to have to do it in Override Audit, which is this thing here that just shows you the diff. And then you can go from the diff back to the file, and if you make a change, well, that's probably a bad example of that, but if you make a change and save the file, you can rediff it and see the change immediately come back there, for example. I find this a lot easier to work with in that particular regard, but yeah, extracting a package, never a good idea. I consider it my mission in life to find people that say, so how do I edit the inside of this package? To say, you can, but don't. You're going to be sorry. You're going to be so sorry. Maybe that's an example of a tip that someone else might find interesting. I also had another idea for something like that. That can happen in Sublime Text 4. The ability to open a resource. Oh, that's probably not going to work because it's there. But I have a crunky way to mark things as overrides in here, which is there's a lot of nicer ways to do that now than there used to be before. So what other what's something about Sublime that you find makes your editing work a lot faster? A key binding you've created, a macro that does some sort of repetitive task, something like Mike was talking about, being able to get at definitions faster, which is an example of altering a keybind to make it easier to hit for yourself when you're working. Is that an example of something that exists in VI and now you can do it here too? Or was that just something that it's easier to do, easier to press than having to reach up to hit the function key for that? One of the things that I had lined up, or some of them, UI related things like the aforementioned right clicking here to get this, or left clicking to show and hide the sidebar, and how that's different now between Sublime Text 3 and Sublime Text 4, or what this menu, drop down menu does, which is currently nothing, or what these do, because people ask about those a fair bit. Utilizing a key binding to open the context menu is a big one too. Tab multi-select is definitely on the list of stuff. I was actually going to do that a little ways back, but there was that problem where one of the like select to the left command wasn't there. And Will said that he's going to be writing some official documentation for that stuff, so I was sort of waiting for that so that I could supplement it. I created a plugin that shows Sublime and platform info in a dialog and can quickly copy and paste in the issue tracker. Hey, that's handy. Does it go to definition in Vim? Cool. Although I used VI, or I say VI. When I say VI, assume Vim. I mean, I could probably use VI, but I'm used to the enhancements that the improved part of Vim gets you, or the M part of that. But I would generally, we played a little bit with tags, mostly, and this is the same here in Sublime as in, I wonder, as in VI. I don't think I have oh, I do. We do this. Been a long time since I looked at this. Objective-C source code doesn't lend itself particularly well to symbol navigation in Sublime. This is a bad example because this is just main, because of the way that methods in classes use keyword arguments. So historically, the syntax can't really pull out just the name of the method because it sort of interleaves the name of the name of an argument with the actual value of the thing. So I think we were using C tags for a while. It wasn't I mean, I think it worked. Our code base is ridiculously large. You'd have to remember to calculate stuff. But yeah, it just never seemed to be quite where it's at. Package dev is definitely super helpful. I mean, I shudder to look at a syntax file without package dev installed, right? Well, except for maybe the plain text one. That one's probably okay. But being able to look at something like this and see exactly what the captures are representing is like so crucial to being able to understand how a lot of stuff is working, or implementing syntax tests and have it automatically enter the rules is definitely a thing. I might have covered that a little bit in the video on package dev. I don't think this specifically. Enhanced syntax highlighting for things like syntaxes, key bindings, builds is one. Auto-completion in builds is another big thing. Auto-completion in places like menus and key bindings, settings as well. I don't know that I talked about that in settings. The pencil icon, yes. And some stuff has changed in there as well. It just makes you think, like, while all the information in videos I have on the channel right now is still accurate, it seems like, kind of want to revisit some of those topics again in the light of new builds, better hitting the microphone with your finger like a dupe, better microphone in general, better lighting in general, better video recording setup in general. Hopefully just better talking about stuff in an interesting way in general. But I don't know if it does the channel a service to repeat video content that's already available. I mean, it has been a couple of years at this point, so maybe that's worth a refresher, but I really strive to come up with new stuff. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that. I cringe sometimes when I look at the length of some older videos and how those could be like a couple of smaller, more focused videos. But, it is what it is, unfortunately. YouTube doesn't give you the power to replace the content of one video with another one. Although it would be cool if it did. Maybe I should switch my operations over to Vimeo. An interesting thing. And then, of course, there's also the idea of LSP videos coming to the channel as well. So we really have our plates full with potential topics. Time-saving tips and techniques. Those hidden elements of Sublime that you didn't know what they were. Some things that are just a mystery in general, like expand selection, which is one of those things that was enhanced in version 4050, but I don't think there was really any, I can't remember now, it's been so long. Did it replace an existing similarly named command or just get smarter? Have to look in the changelog for that. Control Shift A, not something I use a lot. But what exactly does it expand out to? Am I hitting the wrong key here for this operation? It's one of those things that is kind of a mystery to me because I don't use it very often and it wasn't really explained. Look in the correct menu for that. Control Shift A, expand selection. Now some of these, of course, make perfect sense. To line, to word, which is Control D, which is quick add next, which interestingly enough is also the same command that is bound to is it in go to? No, it's probably in find. Quick find and selection expand to word actually use the same command behind the scenes. Yeah, so I mean, maybe it makes sense to do something like that. I mean, it probably does. It's probably just me feeling all weird, like, but I've already talked about key bindings. I don't know that I should talk about key bindings again. I don't, basically, I guess what it comes down to is I don't want someone to think that I'm just recycling old content, because it is still technically valid, but maybe not as approachable as some of the newer videos are. So yeah, and then if I was to come up with a newer video, what happens to the old one? I don't want to delete it. Do I just mark it as, as unlisted because there are things that link to it, but for anything that's new, it would go to the new one? I'm not sure what the best way to handle something like that is. I wasn't entirely prepared for people to actually be interested in the channel to the degree that they are. But more stuff is going to have to come out for Plugin 101 as well, because there's new API stuff in there, which is something that has sort of been backburnered a little bit, because looking at the analytics for the channel for Plugin 101 videos, as far as people watching them and viewing them in general, the analytics on them are way down, below a lot of other videos on the channel that have been around for a while, which completely makes sense, because if you're just someone that wants to use Sublime and you don't necessarily want to create your own package, then having one of those videos isn't going to be of any use to you, right? So I kind of stopped rolling those out for the time being, partially because sort of hoping that Sublime 4 comes out, we can roll in with some new API stuff for that, and kind of plan out how those changes are going to be presented in the video once we know that everything's pretty stable. Although I'm pretty sure that it's pretty much locked down right now. I don't think it's going to be doing too much changing at this point. I would imagine it would take some sort of act of God for something like that, right? But also just because if it's an alternate video every other week like it was for a while, then the lack of people wanting to watch something like that makes them stop clicking on the link because they know that it's one of those videos. And the fewer people that click on a thing, that teaches YouTube that when that's seen in a search result or on the front page or in a recommendation, that nobody wants to watch it, or most people don't want to watch it, so it stops recommending the channel as a whole. It's a whole gigantic, shame spiral kind of thing. But that's a good idea. Yeah. The revised, revisited thing. Yeah. And I guess old video could stay in place, right? Old video could stay in place. New video could be revised. It could even link out to the old one, and there could be a card on the old one that, or a pinned comment that says there's a newer version of this. I don't. That is probably a thing. I should probably think about that. Tangentially reminding me that April 1st, which is a Thursday, is going to mark the start of the 3rd year of stuff here on the channel on a regular basis, if I'm remembering correctly. I think it was April 1st, 2018, where I uploaded the first video in what is currently the longest streak of hitting a video every Monday, no matter what, even if I had to scramble and do an update video for stuff that's happening because my headset was broken or something like that. One of my most popular videos on the channel is the two Terminus videos, and in one of those I was still kind of sick, so I sound a little scratchy on those, but I got the video out anyway. That'll be the start of, like if I did it was like 2018, the start of like the 3rd year of non-stop videos, and I'm right at this point with trying to see how far I can keep that streak going. Which makes April 2nd as a Friday be Good Friday, which is the day that I have off. So I have the Thursday before that off, the 1st, and the following Monday and Tuesday. Pondering the idea of doing some daytime streams, either here or on Twitch. Just to try to catch a little bit of a different audience, maybe, because the way that timing goes. I'm not sure if that's something that would be interesting to people or not. Perhaps not, in regards to ever removing a feature. Have we seen in our recent memory a feature disappear out of Sublime? I don't think we have. Supplanted with something better, like Sublime Color Scheme as a format, replacing TM Theme and making it better, still supporting the old file but not getting any new features, is one. Ditto for TM Language and Sublime Syntax. Yeah. I guess the closest we get to removing a feature is dropping 32-bit support altogether for Sublime Text 4 in favor of only 64-bit versions of things. I don't know if having a 32-bit Linux and Windows version of something counts as a feature per se. But yeah, and I should also point out that I'm pretty cognizant of all of the videos that are on the channel and the information that's in them, and clearly I'm a fanatic about Sublime Text in general. So if there ever was some sort of breaking change, I would, make a, if nothing else, a follow-up addendum video for an older video and link to it just to say this thing has changed. It used to be this and now it's this. But I don't remember anything like that happening. In fact, I have a better memory of what videos I've made than I have in what I actually called them at the time. Uh, if you've seen me use my YouTuberizer package to try to grab a link and be unable to figure out exactly where it's supposed to go. Um, but oh, what time we got here? Almost 10 o'clock. My. How the time does fly. So I think this was sort of a fun little chat. I didn't really have anything planned per se for here. Because I really like how these streams are sort of a back and forth with the community as a whole. I mean, we still want to do something like play around with different LSPs and get more familiar with it, but I don't want that to be like a targeted thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? And as far as that goes, I have a couple ideas for third-party package videos that I could make. Like people keep asking about Sublime REPL and Anaconda, so I have it penciled in on the big old list of stuff as potentially something to cover. Um, Kind of hoping that Sublime REPL goes the way of the dinosaur now that Terminus is around, because it's, in my opinion, a better way to go. And perhaps Anaconda not as popular as it could be, or is right now in relation to LSP and the functionality that it provides, but people still ask questions about it. And as we know, there are blog posts and stuff out there about those as well that are going to keep driving people to them. So those are examples of stuff like that. And someone reminded me in the comments on yesterday's video of a package that they use. It does, yes. It says, "I will krill you," and then there's a picture of an angry whale. One of the few shirts I have that's not directly nerd related, although tangentially it could be construed to be part of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But good spot on the small camera. Here's a bigger version of it. One of the people we follow on Twitch is someone named Art of Bianca, who does a prodigious amount of painting and stuff. She's got a lot of shirts. This is an example of her work. You can't see it on the wall behind me back there, but it's right about where the tip of my finger is, right here. The little guy that is, if you watch the videos, because he's back in that area, he looks like an unimpressed guy holding a D20 with a natural 1. That's something that she did as well. But yeah, we were just looking through her merch page and saw this shirt, and I'm like, okay, well, we're buying that shirt, because if I don't have it, I'm gonna die. So, whoops, pardon me. If there's something else on this site that you like, you should let me know, because I'm definitely buying that shirt. And that began the saga of stuff that we needed to order. But yeah, it's just she had even forgotten that she had the thing. I just find it hysterically funny myself. So yeah, good spot. I'm glad you enjoyed that one. Does anybody else have any other questions about stuff? Or I think we should probably wind this bad boy down. Focus on workflows, definitely. And for stuff like that, I am 100% at the whims of someone from the community saying what they use, per se. Because when it comes to add-on packages for Sublime, if I did a little something like, let's see, make sure I got the correct thing in focus. the list of things I have installed: automatic package reloader for when I'm editing packages, channel repository tools for that one time I added something to package control. Don't necessarily need it. Wrote it myself, wrote it myself, wrote it myself, wrote it myself. I looked at a Docker file on Windows, so I have that now. Wrote it myself. I thought icons would be cool. I'd like to delete files. Wrote it myself. I have a config file that I needed to look at one time. Wrote it myself. This is the magic of how I get myself into this thing, by the way. Wrote it myself, wrote it myself. Something that I was helping somebody else with. I mean, when it comes right down to it, wrote it myself. The list of packages that I have listed in here, in fact, I'm pretty sure multi-command is installed because I was answering someone's question on the forum and I needed to install it to make sure that it was going to do what I thought it was going to do. Wrote it myself. Most of the packages I have installed are ones I wrote myself. So when it comes to how do you set up a good Python work environment, what packages do you use? I just use Sublime. So if you have packages that you use for something like that, like Anaconda or Jedi or something, then that would be great. There should be bang, a bunch there. And we just have to wait for the slowness of YouTube chat to make its way all the way out to Nightbot in the cloud, and then we'll see if that actually does a thing. Boop. Chances are good. What you're looking for is in there. Some, not all. And I'm going to need to actually check a thing over here because I'm not sure if I have a command for this. Hang on. Or rather, I'm pretty sure I have a command, but I'm not sure what it is. Okay, so yeah. Most of my personal code you're going to find on this Git repository here, which is my personal one. There's all kinds of stuff in there. It's not necessarily Sublime Text. It's just all over everywhere. But there's some stuff in there. For a fair amount of Sublime Text related things, you're going to find them in this repository here, the Stealthy and Hasty repository, which it's an organization, I should say. So there's a bunch of, this isn't a repository per se, it's a link to an organization that has a bunch of repositories, one of which is named Sublime Scraps and is basically the .files repo for how I have my Sublime set up, but how I have it set up, well, actually, no, that's a different one. It has some stuff in there. The description of any video on the channel has a thing that says my Sublime setup. That's my .file repository for how I have my Sublime setup for the videos that I create. But in this Stealthy and Hasty, couple of Sublime Text Ninjas repository, you'll find a lot of Sublime Text packages in there, ones that I've worked on directly, and some of them, if you're a member of the Discord, so you notice that the administrators are named ninjas. So yeah, me and Keith Hall, who you will find also in the Sublime Text Discord and on the forum and on Stack Overflow. The two of us together have that as a organization on GitHub where we put a bunch of Sublime Text stuff that we collaborate on and work on together. Examples of that include the pipe text package that we worked on in some streams a few months back, where you can select some text and hit a key to ship out that text to a command line program, pass it to standard input, and then capture the output and replace it in. Or the piano plugin that actually turns Sublime into a MIDI piano, which I would demo for you, but I have to fire up a MIDI synth, and I'm not entirely sure if I have that configured and good to go yet, and a bunch of other stuff as well. I guess I could probably just click that link, and then we could actually just look at the stuff instead of me talking about it, right? But yeah. Notice also the cleverness of the uppercasing of the STs in both places. From the person that brought you spelling nerds with a U and a Z instead of an E and an S. I am the stealthy one, and Keith is the hasty one, based on our original profiles of stuff way back in the day. Because I will sit and just pop in and say, I wrote a thing, and there's like a whole bunch of stuff. And Keith will throw some stuff up and then start collaborating on it from there. But because he goes by Keith in the Discord, but he goes by King Keith on the forum. That's why the ninja has a crown. But also, the ninja has the cool little Sublime logo, and the scarves are the Sublime logo colors, which tends to be a theme with stuff that I do here, there, and everywhere. But if we were to go over this stuff for the pinned repositories, this is just, it's actually sort of Sublime Text stuff. Lots of different build sample plugins. Anytime someone asks for a plugin or an example of how to do something that involves a plugin, I tend to write one, whether that's on the forum, Stack Overflow, in the Discord. They usually find their way here. I currently have like 30 loose plugins in my home directory that need to be put in there. HyperHelp Core, if you're unfamiliar with that, is the system that powers this hyperlinked help system that I created for Sublime Text, which allows you to store any sort of help that you want and hyperlink around and navigate back through history, table of contents, hover links, can open web pages, etc., etc. That is HyperHelp Core, the help system in general. Based on that, Snappy is the package that you just saw, which bundles the Sublime Text API documentation and some of the other documentation from the official documentation, like build systems and color schemes and coming soon themes, which allows you to do things like, if we looked at a Sublime build file and hit the key, now we're looking at the help for build systems. If you wanted to know what options you can use in one, like did you know you can set a build system to trigger based on files that exist, for example? All that stuff's in Snappy. HyperHelp Author is something that helps you write those particular help files. And then Sublime Piano, Sublime Text plugin that does MIDI piano stuff. There's a video of that somewhere, not sure where. This is where we store our actual packages that you can install and download. You've probably seen that a bunch of places. And then we start getting into packages that I created, like Sublinet, which is the this one here, which you can't really see doing anything super interesting right now. But if I had a copy of Sublime Text over here on this Windows machine to my left and copied some text on this computer, you can see that it shipped it across to this one, and then whoops, I can paste it on this system, and you can see what it was that I copied from the one over there. I like to tinker with stuff. Whoops, that's not the page. Pipe text lets you select text, ship it out to standard output, bring it in. We already talked about that one and that one and that one. And then the package control channel, which you need to be able to release stuff. So yeah, there's a fair amount of nonsense in here. I guess we could probably also click on here just to go through the list of repositories. Of course, I have some private repositories in here too as well. Ooh, but they're not necessarily a secret that they exist as far as I know. Those are just repositories that I deal with, I would imagine. Oh, is this the same list? Did I accidentally do something dumb there? I did, didn't I? I don't generally do it like this, so I probably should have looked from that entry over there. Well, in any case, yeah, this stuff is like totally available. One of the things that's actually in there is the YouTuberizer package, which you've probably seen me use. Like so. We can find one of the most popular packages. You can grab links to stuff. We can see even how many views and how many likes and dislikes that one has. the Terminus video is the most popular one, and this one is the second most popular of all of those. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how great the quality is in any of those particular things, but technically I at least have a passing understanding of how the Sublime Text API works. So if you were looking at examples for how to do stuff, that's totally a thing that would happen, right? But yeah, so going back to your other thing there, I have video. Somebody asked for a video on how to set up Sublime for PHP. So that's something that I would need to research. I don't know what the best thing is to do for that. I would imagine LSP, if anything, right? Because it's probably going to be the be-all for a lot of code intelligence stuff these days. I think even the Jack, who sometimes comes into the live streams, is used to point people at the PHP package that does completions, and now he recommends people use LSP as well. So those sorts of videos are kind of tricky to come up with because I don't have a lot of experience in those kinds of setups, because I do tend to just use what's built into Sublime by default. But certainly, Krilling notwithstanding, if you pop into the Discord, and I know you're there and Ashwin's there, there's the link has been dropped in here a couple of times. And as a matter of fact, I will click here as we're winding down here. Throw it one more time. Oh, actually, it just posted it up there a couple of minutes ago, so I'm not going to do anything there. I am also heading off for the night, Mike. We're heading out. Thanks for hanging out this far. So yeah, anybody that's watching this now or in the replay, which will remain live until roughly now-ish tomorrow when I start my Twitch stream, hop into the Discord chat, say hi. If you have any comments on any videos, great. Totally looking for examples for videos you'd like to see, tips you have for editing, like the ones we talked about tonight. If we haven't talked about one, I knew what you meant. I don't read AMs and PMs. I know that you're on the coast that's 3 hours ahead of me. Discord, all that stuff up. Going to be doing Twitch live tomorrow as well. Not entirely sure what we're going to be working on. Could be something bot related. Could be something game related instead. I don't know. Got to decide what it is we're going to do there. But whether I see you in a Twitch live stream or in the live stream here next week or in next Monday's video, I want you all to have a Sublime day, a Sublime week, a Sublime rest of the time until I see you again. And remember, drop into the Discord anytime you'd like to chat or have any sort of questions about videos that we're doing here on the channel or suggestions. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see ya in the next one. I'm reaching out. Bye, everybody.